Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and I wanted to talk for a second about President Obama's response to the situation that's occurring in Baltimore, Maryland. I was actually scheduled to go to Baltimore in about a month, and so this city's really been heavy on my mind. Baltimore is a great city with amazing people there, and some beautiful black people, and also the city is interesting as well because it was actually featured on that what I consider to be the greatest TV show in history called The Wire. And The Wire did a good job of really laying out for the world to see all the various socioeconomic issues that exist in Baltimore, which were kind of a microcosm of what's happening all over the country. I mean, you could replace the city, throw in Chicago, throw in LA, and you're going to see a lot of the same dynamics. And one of the things that you always see, or that you saw very clearly, is that there's an issue with a consistent underclass that is brutalized and victimized by the police, consistently mistreated, disregarded, left behind, ignored, disrespected by the criminal justice system. They don't receive justice because we know justice is something that only tends to exist for rich people and white people. Whenever somebody tells you that you're going to have to spend $10,000 just to defend yourself in the court of law, that's not a justice system. That's some sort of paid representation or something like that. Whenever somebody tells you that being arrested means that you're going to be offered a plea bargain with the implicit threat that if you take your case to trial, your sentence can be 10 times longer than it would be if you had accepted the plea. That's not justice, especially when you talk about black people who have to go in front of all white juries who are not even from their communities, who are more likely to send them to prison even for things they did not do. So the justice system for black people really does not exist. So laying the foundation for that, I want to go into the president's statement on what's been happening in Baltimore. Because as you see in Baltimore, there's been unrest. There's been a lot of peaceful protesting, but there's also been some real constructive action, something very different from what we've seen in the past. There are people there who are saying, look, let's not listen to these civil rights organizations, which are basically owned by other people. Let's not listen to people like Al Sharpton, because Al Sharpton does work for the government. He's coming down to squash the dissent and control you. And there's no other way to put it. I mean, if you look at how many dozens of times Al has gone to the White House, you know that he works more for the government than he works for you. It does not mean that he cannot advocate for you, because he is a liaison between the people and the government, but he works more on behalf of Obama and on the Obama administration, and more behalf on the behalf of the federal government than he works on the behalf of the people. And that's just a fact. I mean, don't just take my word for it. Go look at the records, look at the things that he's done, look at all the critiques from both sides, and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. Now, the reason it's important to really talk about the lack of a justice system for black people is because at that point, when the formal system does not offer justice, then where do you get justice from? I mean, at that point, the only justice that's left is street justice. The only justice that's left is some sort of uprising, because we know that peaceful marches do not work. They do not get the results that we're looking for. Some people have gotten to the point where they really feel that nonviolence is nonsense. Basically, black people have been trained to believe that there is some sort of dignity in enduring consistent abuse and remaining silent about it, or just marching down the street singing "We shall overcome" and hoping that everything works out. And they send you to your church so you can pray and hope that it gets better. And then they keep on sending your children to prison. They keep shooting your boys in the street. They keep on sending our fathers and husbands and mothers and daughters through countless amounts of trauma that white people never have to go through. Even if something as simple as the black unemployment rate. I mean, that's just one of 1,000 examples I could give you. Think about this. When white unemployment gets to about 7, 8, 9%, white people start losing their damn mind. They go crazy. They're yelling at the president, "You need to do something about this, or you're going to get impeached because you're not doing your job," and all this other stuff. Black people's unemployment is consistently double digits. It hits levels of 12, 13, 14%. Black male unemployment, particularly in urban areas for young black men, can reach as high as 30, 40%. And we're expected to just sit there and take it. Maybe have a march, maybe go to church and pray, maybe just sit back and hope that if you believe in this system, that everything's going to be okay. Well, I don't think anybody in a million years can say that everything's going to be okay if you sit there silent and don't do anything about your condition. And I don't think anybody can agree that just marching about it and praying about it and hoping for the best is going to make things better. I'm not dissing people that pray. I'm just saying that prayer without action to back it up is typically a passive response that's been taught to you over hundreds of years to get you to be afraid to stand up for the rights that you should expect as a human being. White people have no problem standing up and saying this ain't right. You know, you're taking something away from us. You're killing our children. You're hurting our people. Black people, on the other hand, I think we get a little bit nervous. We also have leaders who have been co opted by the establishment and the power structure, and their specific role is to contain you and to control you and to keep things like Baltimore from happening. But I'm actually proud of everybody who's protesting in Baltimore. I'm talking about the marchers, those who are marching. That God bless them. They're getting out there. They are doing something. Now we can't act like it doesn't matter at all, but we know that that's not the complete solution. But maybe a little good cop, bad cop does work. Maybe the Negroes with guns are the ones who convince politicians to work with the Negroes who will march, right? Dr. King was able to be more successful because he had Malcolm X and the Black Panthers standing back saying, we will not tolerate your disrespect. We will not turn the other cheek. We will not just march and pray and hope that you decide to stop brutalizing us. We have a responsibility to protect our community. We have a responsibility to protect our children and to protect our family. Now I'm going to read a little bit about a little bit of what the president said. Let me see here. I'm getting this off of CBS Baltimore. When individuals get crowbars and start prying open doors to loot, they're not protesting, they're not making a statement, they're stealing. When they burn down a building, they're committing arson, and they're destroying and undermining businesses, destroying opportunities in their own communities that rob jobs and opportunities from people in that area. So it is entirely appropriate that the mayor who I spoke to yesterday and the governor who I spoke to yesterday work to stop that senseless destruction. The overwhelming majority of the community of Baltimore handled this appropriately, expressing real concern and outrage over the possibility that our laws were not applied evenly in the case of Mr. Gray. There are problems and challenges when it comes to how policing and our laws are applied in certain communities, and we have to pay attention to it and respond, the president said. And it looks like that's it. From what I understand, there was a little bit more that he did say. He did actually mention African Americans and the way African Americans are policed. He didn't go as far as really stating the problem for exactly what it is. And I think that the fundamental question is whether or not this is going to be followed with serious aggressive action. I've heard that or I've read today somewhere that the president is planning to conduct a federal investigation into Freddie Gray's death, in which he had his spine snapped by the police. 80% of his spine was damaged. This is not something you're hearing in mainstream media. This is not, and what I will say here is that if that had happened to a white police officer, the reaction would have been very, very different. You would have seen a much more different response. You would have heard a much more different statement from politicians. You wouldn't see people condemning a violent response to those responsible for that aggression. I guarantee you, you go out and you snap a police officer's spine, violence will be used against you. And no one's going to condemn that violence. No one's going to say, well, violence is inappropriate under any circumstances, and there's no excuse for that kind of violence. No, they're going to say, yeah, the excuse is that you snapped a police officer's neck or his spine, and that's why violence was used on you. There are black people where violence is used on us for nothing. You talk back to a cop, or you wiggle funny, and the cop slams your face into the concrete. Ain't nobody's telling the cop that violence is unacceptable under any circumstances. So what's so ironic is that you do have this double standard where, when it comes to the brutality of the state, of white police officers, etc., against black people, and not just white cops, but black cops too. When it comes to the violence used against us, that violence is almost never questioned. It's rarely questioned. In fact, officers that murder innocent, unarmed black people are very rarely even acquitted. Very rarely even indicted for the crime. They don't even go on trial for the crime. So violence in their case is not only accepted, but sometimes it's even encouraged in response to simple any kind of disobedience. On the other hand, violence coming in the other direction, even if it's in self-defense, is typically discouraged, and a lot of us really fall for that nonsense. So what I would just say is that respect must be earned. As somebody said, and I loved how they said it, they were talking about the brother out in Tulsa who got shot, where the guy was trying to tase him. He accidentally shot him, and the guy said, I can't breathe, or I'm losing my breath, and the cop said, fuck your breath. And one guy said, well, if your response to American citizens who say that I'm losing my breath is fuck your breath, then the response of citizens to you as an officer should be fuck your badge. So, because respect must be earned, and if you're not earning that respect, then don't expect people to treat you like you are deserving of any form of decency or dignity or any of those things. When Eric Garner was dead on the ground and said, I can't breathe," and they kept choking him, the paramedics came. They didn't even perform CPR on him. My friend Daryl Pageant, I can't remember if it was my friend Daryl Pageant or Yurima Karama. These are two brothers I respect. They're fellow scholars. One studied law after he got out of prison. The other one has become an amazing hip hop artist. But he used prison as his university. He read tons of books while he was in prison. So he is a fellow scholar. One of these brothers, who each of whom did 20 years in prison for very minor offenses, and that's the backdrop of what you're seeing in Baltimore. One of them told me a story about their cellmate who was dying, and the guard was supposed to perform CPR on him, and he told the guard, "Hey man, you're supposed to do CPR. He's dying," and the guard just shook his head. "No, I'm not doing that." So the thing is that there's this consistent dehumanization in terms of how black people are treated. We are hunted down and treated like animals, and so before you even say one word about whether or not a response was over the top or a response was too violent, your first words need to be in reaction to the instigation of that violence. Nobody would be looting a CVS store if you had not come into a black community with your little soldiers and snapped a brother's neck, just for no good reason. That wouldn't have happened. So if you want to talk about the reaction, then you must talk about the initial action. And that's the problem we've always had with stupid terms like reverse racism. People want to say, well, that the affirmative action is racist. No, affirmative action is a reaction to the fact that for 400 years you locked black people out of opportunities and acted like we were supposed to just let that slide. No, so ultimately, I think that when you talk about the president's statement, I'm not dissing the president's statement. I'm not saying it's wrong. I say it's definitely incomplete. But remember, the president works for the government. He does not work for you. He's not your Malcolm X, your new Martin Luther King. He's none of that. He is an employee of the state, just like Al Sharpton, just like a lot of these. The NAACP is an employee of the state to some extent and an employee of corporations. They're not going to represent the interests of everybody. What they're going to do whenever the most horrific injustice is committed against you, they're going to march and pray, write a letter, and ask the white man to make it right. And when he says no, I piss on you, they're going to just walk away humbly and say, well, we tried, we did our best. Well, at some point, somebody's got to come along and say, no, we're not going to knock on the door. We're going to kick the door down. And unfortunately, it's getting to that point where certain doors have to just be kicked down because this justice system cannot continue the way it has been going. I mean, if the president really wants to do something progressive, with his power, he could institute a broad-scale investigation into the many thousands of false incarcerations and over sentences that have been handed out mostly to African Americans. If you saw the New York Times article recently that 1.5 million black men are missing from the black community as husbands, fathers, leaders, and providers because they've been caught up in this criminal justice system. And the propaganda leads you to believe that black men are the ones getting locked up because black men are more likely to engage in criminal behavior. But they don't talk to you about how the CIA delivered drugs and guns and all these other things into the black community. They don't talk about the way black men are more likely to be harassed by the police, which leads to their chances of being arrested. If they harassed every American the way they harass black men, everybody would probably get locked up for something, because everybody breaks the law at some point, whether you speed 3 miles over the speed limit or you litter or you jaywalk. Everybody breaks the law at some point. You got a joint in your pocket, you didn't pay all your taxes or whatever. Everybody could be locked up if you followed everything to the letter of the law. But for black people, the margin of error is so much lower. So we're more likely to be harassed by the cops, more likely to be arrested. We're least likely to be able to afford true justice. We are threatened with these all-white juries and these plea bargains, which lead to most sentences being the result of a plea bargain where you didn't even get a trial. You're not getting fair trials. That is not a justice system. That is some sort of Nazi, Nazi Gestapo kind of thing. Then on top of that, you're going through the horrors of prison. These husbands and fathers, these men who would normally be providing providing for families. These are the men that black women would normally be marrying. They're going to prison. They're being murdered. They're being raped. They're being beaten half to death by both the guards and other inmates. Nobody's saying a word. And then they come out with all this trauma, no, not a nickel to their name, and no job opportunities, and expected to provide. And so you wonder why their children are pissed off. You wonder why their kids want to go kick in the window of a CVS pharmacy. It's because you're too stupid to go look at the root cause of why all this is happening. These kids are angry because you've destroyed their families. So I'm going to try not to get too upset. But ignorance upsets me. And I'm not saying that the president's ignorant. I'm saying that this system is ridiculous. Just the other day, I read a story about how a brother did 20 years in prison because the FBI, supposedly this sophisticated crime organization, the FBI mistook his hair for the hair of a dog. They put a dog's hair under the analysis, and apparently the dog was at the crime scene, and this brother got 20 years in prison. They took 20 years of his life because they didn't even take the time. They didn't care enough about his life or his justice to make sure that you were looking at his hair and not the fucking hair of a dog. That's insane to me. That's sick. How in the hell do you think people are going to go through something like this and not be angry at you? How do you think? And then when it's all said and done, you don't even apologize. You don't give that family any sort of restitution most of the time for what you've put them through, and you expect them to just march and sing "We shall overcome" and hope for the best every time you've committed some sort of atrocity against them. Well, most people would say that if I told you a story and said there were a group of Jews who picked up weapons in World War II and fought the Nazis and shot Nazis in the head and went to go kill Adolf Hitler, you wouldn't think those people were crazy. You wouldn't think those people were thugs. You would say, that's right. That's justice. That's what those people are supposed to do because you're supposed to defend your family, because look at what the Nazis were doing to the Jews. Well, guess what? What they're doing to black people in America is worse than what was done to the Jews during World War II. Because the Jews went through this for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Black people have gone through this for 400 years. 400 years. So, I'm sorry, I'm not going to condemn the violence. I'm not going to condemn the looters. I'm not going to even talk about any of that until you talk about the root issue and why you've got innocent people going to prison because you don't even take the time to make sure that you're analyzing this person's hair as opposed to the hair of a dog. So these issues go far deeper than just Freddie Gray. Freddie Gray was the tip of the iceberg. That was the trigger that unleashed a volcano of anger and energy that has been in existence in this community for many, 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 many decades. This is intergenerational anger and pain that you're seeing coming from the community. And I'm sorry, I consider the people kicking in the door at the CVS, they're protesters too. They're saying, I don't give a shit. I don't care about my life anymore because you've made my life such a living hell that I don't even care about myself. And so if I don't even care about myself, why in the hell should I care about you? So I say, if you can't fix it, burn it down. That's all I got to say. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World. Please take care. By the way, we have a new film out called Resurrecting Black Wall Street. I hope you will support. It's about the Black Wall Street atrocity in 1921, which is yet another story of the many, 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 many times where black people were murdered and had their wealth stolen from them. That's why the wealth disparity exists, because black people have had their wealth taken from them. It's not because we gave our money away. In the Black Wall Street story, that's one story that every black child in America needs to know. And if you want to support the film, which I hope you will, and we do use that money to hire black people, please go to resurrectingblackwallstreet.com. That's resurrectingbblackwallstreet.com. Until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. I am gone. Peace.